workshop in scientific writing from horizontal to vertical narrative. After living through a dark and sad period, shaken by the threat to the lives of Brazilian citizens from a disease that devastated the planet and also by attacks on our democracy, we are gathered here today as a testimony of resistance and hope for the future. We are here to mark not only the normalization of face-to-face classes in the year 2023, but to celebrate the university's mission to be an institution that is to imagining new paths and that brings together people from different cultural and political backgrounds. This is a mission assumed by the graduate program in psychology. Throughout the last years, the postgraduate program in psychology has conquered with hard work the status of one of the most outstanding postgraduate programs in Brazil. For the rigor of the work that the professors and students do, for the scientific and social relevance of that work, for its insertion in the great themes of current psychology, and we must highlight the network of relations and academic cooperation that our body of researchers maintains with outstanding researchers in Brazil and in the world. This workshop is the result of the collective effort to persist in the ideal of a university focused on citizenship and science. This workshop carries forward a project that has been invented, above all, by the brilliant and generous mind of Jan Valsner, and by the incredible network of researchers he has fostered around the world in cultural psychology. This workshop expresses the hope for the creation of new general perspective in the social sciences through basic principles supported by cultural psychology. With this event, we bring together leading international researchers and young students to create their own innovative solutions to basic social and psychological issues. I would like to emphasize the fact that this workshop is the continuation of work that initiative of Professor Ana Cecília de Souza Bittencourt Bastos. Ana Cecília is a brilliant researcher and a charming poet. By her hands, cultural psychology has been getting in opening new paths for psychology. She was the first professor to organize a cultural psychology event in Salvador. It was she with Valsner that made it possible for us to be gathered here today. It was with much effort and an imponderable spirit workshop was conceived and planned. I would like to nominally thank Professors Jan Valsner, Nandita Chaudhary, Pina Marsico, Luca Tateu, Vivian Volkmer, Patrícia Zuccolotto, Lia Lordelo, and Marilena Kisto. doctoral students Juliana Almeida, Catarina Sakai, and Márcio de Abreu, and our dear research group, Investigations in Cultural Psychology codes, for their dedication in the creation and realization of this event. For the first day of the workshop, we have the great honor to welcome Professors Jan Valsner from Aalborg University, Denmark, and now a visiting professor at UFBA, Katrin Kulasev from Tallinn University, Estonia, Kevin Carrier, from Stonehill College, New England, USA, and Denis Boulanger, Université du Québec, Canada. I hope this will be an excellent opportunity for us to be together and work together. The French writer Stendhal once said that it is a privilege to have our own passions as work. So I invite Professor Lia Lordelo, who will be the lecture mediator today. So please, Lia.
Good morning, everyone. Here? Você estava aqui?
Of course. Good morning, everyone. Let me say a few words in Portuguese first. Bom dia, gente. Bem-vindas, bem-vindos. Estamos muito alegres de receber vocês todos aqui no seminário. Eu vou ficar responsável por mediar essas palestras de hoje, iniciais. E eu queria também dar um aviso, né? Antes de passar a palavra para o professor Ian, eu queria dizer que, ao contrário das semanas anteriores, nós não vamos poder traduzir frase a frase, porque amanhã é muito longa. Então, a gente vai assistir a palestra, que é uma palestra curta, depois eu posso fazer algum comentário em cima, e a gente vai ter 30 minutos, quase 30 minutos de debate. Então, para quem também tem alguma dúvida de tradução, a gente pode sanar isso no momento seguinte, mas como a gente não tem equipe muito grande, fica mais difícil traduzir tudo o tempo todo. Então, a gente pede desculpas por um inconveniente, assim, né, para tanta gente, mas a gente vai também tentar disponibilizar, por exemplo, alguns slides a gente pode traduzir e disponibilizar como material de estudo, didático, tá certo? Gostaria de chamar o professor Valsner para fazer a abertura do evento e depois a gente passar ao palestrante, a professora Katrin. Ian, it's with you.
Muito obrigado, Lia. Muito obrigado.
It's on.
Okay? On? No? No, it's on. Not on.
It's on.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, many thanks to everybody for being here. Many thanks to organizers of this meeting. And what I will try to do is very briefly tell something about the mysterious topic of today's workshop. In my understanding, the history of it goes back to Salerno and our meeting in Salerno, where we were organizing something like a library tour of how to read. We have 200 Italian students, and they were quite fascinated about the novelty that they, well, in order to read, they should not read. To be more exact, in order to read the psychology texts, they are better off not reading them word for word, sentence by sentence, and being confused by them. And then rather they have to read in a way for the ideas that are in the text. The problem in psychology is there are very few ideas. Therefore, reading psychology text is an awful task. So from that experience in Salerno, I think Virginia has ideas, why not do something in Salvador here on the writing side of the same story. And that is exactly what this workshop is part of as a bigger experiment in our writing. Now, what is the problem in psychologist writing? They write too much. And they write in ways that make no sense. This is easy critique to say they make no sense, but let us look anatomically, literally, in the anatomy of the writing. That is exactly the target of our workshop here. The anatomy of the writing takes form of two possible directions. I call one of them horizontal writing and the other one vertical spiral writing. I would suggest it was suggested I should add spiral, and I agree. So what is horizontal writing? Taking a perspective on something. We in social sciences like to take perspectives. And in fact, in many universities, students are explicitly directed to take different perspectives, assuming that different perspectives give us, so to say, democratic look at the phenomenon. So what would be the democratic look at the phenomenon? Let us consider these water bottles a phenomenon, psychological phenomenon, all of them together. Now, if I'm looking at these phenomena, water bottles, from the point of multiple perspectives, I can take this multiple perspective. I can take a behavioristic perspective on it. I can take a psychoanalytic perspective on it from another side. I can take a cultural psychology perspective from a third side. The only thing that I have not done is to actually taste the water. In other sense, all the perspectives taken upon that very basic element, the water, bypass the essence of the element itself. And you see that in the very well prevalence of horizontal writing in psychology, where psychoanalysts say that, cognitivists say that, cultural psychologists say that, and there's very many open questions left. What else could be there? More perspectives. Now, in contrast to this horizontal writing, with many references, usually 10 references for one group, 10 references for another, and so on, we can look into the serious scientific writing, which moves from taking a perspective, or maybe many perspectives, but it definitely moves into the essence of the phenomenon. So a vertical writing, spiral writing, involves, after certain perspective taking, you open a bottle of this water, taste it, and you make a generalization that goes from the quality of the empirical quality of the water, it goes to the theoretical focus on which leaves all of the theoretical perspectives maybe behind. This is what leads science further. Taking simply perspectives horizontally doesn't leave us anywhere, because it is adds one more perspective, deletes one perspective because no longer fashionable. Psychoanalysis no longer fashionable, will drop it. Positive psychology perspective on water, very important new development. Cultural psychology, very important. So you see the point. You see the point that perspective taking is not equal to analysis and not equal to synthesis of particular issues in any sciences, and especially so in psychology, where we are ideologically linked with different perspectives. It's not only that there are different theoretical perspectives, they're all ideologically linked with one or another societal perspective. So that effort to develop an equal stance between them may look equalizing effort, but it does not solve the problem. The problems remain. So in this spirit, we have actually set up a little experiment over this semester here in Salvador. And some of the results of that experiment will come out in this our workshop today and the next 2 days, but I will not reveal exactly the specific features of it. So thank you very much.
Yeah, we'll be really close to.
Thank you, Jan. I'm going to briefly say a few of his ideas here in Portuguese. Ele começou falando da origem, né, do tema do seminário em Salerno, com um evento na biblioteca, né, com a professora Pina. Faz uma crítica em cima do que ele afirma ser muita coisa escrita na psicologia, mas muito poucas ideias importantes, ideias que valem a pena. Então, que por isso que ler muitos livros de psicologia, às vezes, é muito enfadonho, né, por conta disso. E aí ele faz uma distinção entre a escrita vertical e a escrita horizontal. E a escrita horizontal é a escrita que toma um ponto de vista, uma perspectiva para analisar um fenômeno. Isso a gente faz o tempo todo, né? E aí a gente sempre toma um ponto de vista da psicanálise, do behaviorismo, da própria psicologia cultural, e a partir dessa perspectiva a gente vai fazendo novas perguntas, analisando os fenômenos, mas ele afirma que esse tipo de escrita e de pesquisa da escrita vertical não nos leva muito longe, né? Porque a gente não consegue... Horizontal, desculpa. Então, acho que não importa, estou precisando traduzir. Desse tipo de perspectiva não nos leva muito longe. Então, porque a gente, é como se todo mundo... Aí ele deu um exemplo da garrafa de água, todo mundo vai analisar, mas ninguém vai provar a água, beber a água, ou seja, se aproximar de uma essência do que aquele fenômeno é. E a escrita vertical, ele adicionou a escrita espiralar, alguém sugeriu e ele concordou, seria uma escrita que vai para esse ponto fulcral, essencial do fenômeno, buscando uma generalidade, né, uma generalização, que seria mais importante para a gente compreender os fenômenos psicológicos. E ele terminou dizendo que ele está fazendo um experimento mais ou menos secreto aqui no evento, e que ele vai revelar amanhã, né, como é que esse debate e a diferenciação, né, entre o que é a escrita vertical e a escrita horizontal pode proceder aqui, como se o nosso workshop fosse uma tentativa de fazer uma aproximação vertical aos temas de pesquisa. E ele agradeceu, e now I would like to call Professor Katrin Kulasek for her lecture.
Right? Is it yours?
This is mine, yes. No, I have to switch.
Ô, Kátia, ela pode trocar aqui, né? The debate. It's not presentation to resume, it's synthesis. If how much we have to do. Yes. Yeah. I'm going to pressure if you know what regulation is about. It's because I want to translate everything. So I said, no, I'm going to summarize in the end. And so many times so if a whole hour is the whole session. Or maybe 30 minutes. I won't stop you. I won't interrupt you. We can talk for 30 minutes.
Yeah, okay.
You have to use this mic. She said you have to speak louder, closer to the microphone because people are not listening with the mic. So if you it's not of course. course, it's yeah, it's better through the performance. Yes, of course. If you want to be on the front of the table, you have to be yeah.
Okay, here. Yeah. Hello, everyone, and let me introduce myself very briefly. My name is Katri Kullaset, and I'm from Estonia. I'm from Tallinn University. I'm from Estonia and work at the Tallinn University as an associate professor of general psychology. And I'm very grateful that I have an opportunity to meet you, to share knowledge, experiences with you, and especially because this topic of creativity is new for me. But I am very interested in this topic. And but very briefly, formally, I have worked on identity construction, and what I found, and I expected, of course, that these two things, creativity and identity, are very strongly related. And today, when I will introduce my ideas that resonate with cultural psychology, of course, I will focus on artistic creativity. And not, of course, in a general terms, what is creativity or how we can approach creativity in general, but also I will introduce examples that I got from interviews with students of Art Academy, from the Art Academy in Estonia, and also to professional artists and amateurs. So very interesting topic. And as Jan Walsiner mentioned a few minutes ago, that there are different perspectives, but you know, maybe it's not important to introduce all different perspectives to creativity. I like it. I don't have time, and it was not my intention to introduce different approaches and methodologies. I only focus on cultural psychology, and I also like Jan's idea that you have to, not at first, but you have to taste the water. So I also have few not examples, but the tasks for you, so you can think, you can experience your own creativity. So this is briefly for the beginning. Very briefly, what is from how I see what is creativity. One of the main ideas that I like very much is that it is impossible be not creative. Because even this, now maybe it's wrong to say, but mundane meaning making, this everyday meaning making. Even now when you are listening, when you are experiencing the situation, you are very creative because you create new meanings of unfolding situation. And this is one of the main ideas. And because meaning making is a process, then from my point of view, we should focus on process, on how it unfolds and what characterizes this process. And that's what I have tried to do when I conducted my little pilot study. I had 28 art students, 2 professional artists and 2 amateurs. Amateurs are not like enthusiasts, they are not professionals, but they engage in different artistic self-expressions like sewing and other forms of craft, not on the professional level, but just for their own pleasure. And as you can imagine, these 3 different groups can be very different at some point when it comes to creative process. And what I really like is that what is like their phenomenological experience when they are in a creative process, when they do something, when they create something. And I should say that, jump with a big leap forward to say that the enthusiasts are very relaxed when they do their art, not the art, but when they do something, they create something for themselves, like students when they create something for themselves. But if they have to show something for others, like teachers, like professors, they become very stressful, and the situation of this creativity changes. So I skip this. So now is the first task. And what do you see in the next slide? Maybe I have to explain a little bit, but what do you think? What is this?
People can talk, right?
Yeah, people can talk, please.
Fireman is the host draw flowers on the ground.
Good. Yes, it's correct. Absolutely correct. So they are this is a fireman, there is a flower, but that's it? Or
It's art.
it's art? Uh-huh.
But there's definitely no fire.
Definitely not fire.
And this is a true flower.
This is a true flower.
It may be.
It may be.
Creative, right?
And he found something better to do with the mangueiras.
Yeah.
They use the host.
Then finish the fire. It's better to ornament the flower.
Okay. This is something that they did after the fire was, how to say, erased or uh-huh. Uh-huh. So let's move on. And what did you see was this was an Estonian rescue board, the regional rescue team in a very small town called Kunta, posted on Facebook a flower made of fire horses or hydrants to deliver Women's Day greetings. And the post became very popular. It was liked by 2.5 thousand because they are from very small town and the community is very small, which shows that people were really impressed. And this is like a part of being creative, or how what happens when we are creative and we through our creativity we connect with others. Community was touched. This is my interpretation. And it was also shared more than 500 times and even broadcasted on radio. So this was like but it was event for this fire team that they got a lot of attention. But a little bit later, I'll come back to that photo to demonstrate borders, because another important concept related to creativity, like also with the meaning making, is that we are always restricted. There are always borders to cross. And this is what is, I briefly introduce what is here. That if we want to comprehend different layers of creativity, we should pay attention to surrounding, to social context, to relations with others around us, but also, of course, who creates the meaning. It's the person. So that personal experiences, as well as cultural experiences and social experiences, they all come together in one process. So, but a question: Did you have a thought that maybe this photo was made for women? No, nobody. Okay, this is good. This is very good because, and of course, because of the context. Meaning making is always has always context. You probably didn't know that if Estonian man is on the floor, not the floor, but on the land, laying on the land, and there is a snow, then it's probably March. And that in Estonia, men like celebrate the day, not in this way always, of course, but they pay attention to women. So without the additional material, it would be extremely difficult to come to that meaning of the photo. So what was happening? So that my point was that there are always like not restrictions, but borders. There is always like a direction of the meaning making, as well as direction of creativity process. And soon I am going to demonstrate it. But yes, I very much like the concept of borders, because it's in this context this is related with the novelty and creativity. It's this is like an essence of creativity, or the main characteristic, as I see it. Because if you create something you create novelty, but this is always crossing the border. And of course, for me, it is very interesting when I studied, when I conducted the research, I wanted to understand why some directions, why that kind of meanings, but when they create something, when students create something, but it was very difficult to understand. So that what keeps person behind the border? There can be teachers at the university who tell you how is right to create, how to be unique. This is also a very good idea that jumped to my mind, that we expect from artists that they are unique, that express your uniqueness, but at the same time, there are so many restrictions. So teachers or professors is looking at the work and says, no, it's good, but no. So be unique. No, be like, I suggest you to be unique. But this is an interesting thing. And yeah, that there is I also apply Herbst's cogenetic logic, that there are three elements: creativity, non-novelty, the present moment, border, and novelty. The question is how this non-novelty, or like something that exists in form X, becomes the next form. And coming back to that photo, I already mentioned that the creativity process is guided and is restricted. Because there was a flower, then maybe you thought this is like related to celebration. And I think also that there was like a border. You didn't cross the border, and you didn't think that this is probably the daily routine, or they got a call to fire, and now they have their like a little ceremonia. That's what they do before they move. So I think you didn't think in that direction. So I think it a little bit like it demonstrates that we take certain directions. We have a potential to grow into different directions, but still we, in some reason, prefer some ways. And again, the main idea is human mind is creative. In that sense, we are creative. We always are creative, because we make sense of our new immediate experiences, and even these meanings, this meaning that is unfolding now in this workshop, your meaning of the situation. It may be very similar to the meaning you had of the situation maybe 5 minutes ago, but it is not the same. Well, it is not yet the same. It may be similar, but still it's not the same. And yes, I already mentioned that. Maybe I stress others in the creative process, that creativity is context dependent. As I said, there are cultural factors, there are social elements, and everything that can affect how you make sense of some situation. And according to cultural psychology, to understand how we make sense, we have to ask how material that initially exists externally becomes intrapsychological regulating system. And we can find an answer from discussion psychology. These are internalization and externalization processes, and of course, very important aspect, affectivity. And I experience here something.
Yeah.
The sunset. So I think that you also, you have been next to that firehouse? Lighthouse. Lighthouse, and you have been enjoying, or not watching. I don't want to suggest what you have done there. Just watching, observing. And last week, I also asked the participants that something about how do you describe the situation. The same question for you. So how do you describe it when you are sitting there and you are watching the ocean?
É um espetáculo, uma coisa, um fenômeno sobrenatural, um espetáculo, um show.
Supernatural phenomenon? Ela perguntou como vocês descrevem essa situação. Ela tá a foto do pôr do sol no farol da Barra.
E quando o sol se põe, everyone applauds.
Yeah, that happens. Did you see that happen?
Yes. I took it. Oh no, I didn't see that, but I know that they do that.
Yeah.
What I like in this picture is a perspective on the perspective. We see people watching. So we are behind the camera, looking at what can be the perspective of these people, but we also have our own perspective. You see, so it's thank you.
Yeah. It's there. Someone there? Yeah.
It's crazy because it's something that happens every day. But it's different when we sit and watch each other. It's a whole new feeling.
Você pode falar em português para todo mundo agora? Você pode falar em português para todos?
Eu falei que é diferente de você. É diferente você parar para assistir do que o evento do dia a dia. Porque o pôr do sol acontece o tempo todo. Todo dia isso acontece. Mas parar para assistir isso acontecendo é uma coisa completamente diferente.
It's just there every day. But when you say, no, I'm going to sit down here and enjoy this, this is an event. It's a different singular event.
Yeah. Thank you. Good point. Thank you. So, and absolutely, this is correct. There are no right or wrong answers. But I also wanted you to think that if you had to describe it more deeply, in detail, how would you do that?
Então, se vocês tivessem que descrever esse evento em palavras, em detalhes, que palavras vocês usariam para descrever?
Relaxante.
Relaxing.
Silent sharing.
Silent sharing, um compartilhamento silencioso. Beautiful, pretty. Yeah, bonito. Yeah.
Maybe I will go on the sea with a boat to be part of this territory and to move into it.
You would feel this.
I will go on the boat in order to be a part of this territory and to my own movement to feel in the process.
O Dani disse que ele queria entrar num barco para chegar mais perto, para fazer parte mais desse território.
As I look from this home, the sun is going to my own home on the other side.
Okay.
You win.
the movement.
A Nandita disse, eu olho para o sol como se o sol estivesse indo para a minha casa. E está. Né? E ela ganhou, melhor.
I think it can be like a break to our daily routine, and then a moment to admire and connect to something else. I know, maybe the nature or our feelings. I don't know.
Ele disse que é um break, né? Uma pausa no cotidiano, assim como aquela moça falou, né? Se você para olhar, se torna um evento especial. E ele falou de uma conexão com alguma coisa, com a natureza. Né? Melancholy, because the day is ending. Uma melancolia com o final do dia, assim.
I think it's like a pause about the stress of the days because it's peaceful, like everyone else already said. And it's beautiful because you are just in a contemplation.
Yeah.
So it's just wonderful. And there you can sit and be like a meditation statement. So it's wonderful.
É um pouco o que ele disse, né? De contemplação, uma pausa no dia.
I was looking at the picture and I was thinking of the previous picture that you showed of the fireman, and you said because people from Estonia, they could make assumptions about the picture because it's snowing. They know it might be March, Women's Day, the relationship between men and women in Estonia. They could make assumptions that we cannot make, right? So I was thinking that when you look at this picture, there's nothing really there like that tells you if it's a sunset or a sunrise. But we assume it's a sunset because nobody wakes up like this sunset. You don't see this amount of people waking up in the morning to go watch the sunrise.
It's true.
But
True.
but we don't know. It could be a sunrise. But we just assume that it's a sunset because of our common experience.
Mas você pode falar mais alto em português, porque eu acho que o fundo está com um pouco mais de dificuldade de ouvir, não é? As pessoas.
Eu falei.
Levante um pouquinho a emoção.
Eu estava pensando na relação dessa foto com a outra, do bombeiro, porque ela falou que tem alguns elementos ali na foto, a neve. Então, que uma pessoa da Estônia poderia fazer algumas suposições, né? Está nevando, então é março. Ela disse que os homens na Estônia se preocupam com as mulheres, então março é o mês da mulher, e que aquilo era uma homenagem ao Dia das Mulheres, né? Então, são suposições que a gente não poderia fazer porque a gente não tem esse conhecimento desses elementos da cultura deles, né? E eu estava dizendo que essa foto aí, a gente olha e vê um pôr do sol, mas não tem nada na foto realmente que diga se é um pôr do sol ou se é o nascer do sol. Né? Mas a gente supõe que é o pôr do sol porque a gente não vê essa quantidade de gente acordando de manhã cedo para ir sentar na grama para ver o sol nascer. Né? Mas não tem nada realmente na foto que diga se é o pôr do sol ou o nascer do sol. Poderia ser o nascer do sol, não o pôr do sol.
When I'm back in Estonia, then I ask, what do they think? What is happening here? Okay, but you also have a question.
I was just saying that I have an intimate relation with creativity, and I've wrote a song about sunset. I think sunset is really inspiring. And I've wrote about this place and this moment.
That's great. Ele falou que ele tem uma relação especial com esse tema e que ele já escreveu sobre o tema, porque é sobre o pôr do sol, que é uma coisa que é inspiradora.
There is a dual quality in this picture. Whereas the sunset seems real, the colors of the people who are looking at the sunset seem somewhat like a painting. And it reminds me of, since I take a lot of pictures myself, when a picture is stunning, people usually say, wow, it's like a painting.
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
When you're watching it. And when you see a painting that's really beautiful, you say, wow, that looks real. So, you know, that dialogue between something that is a creative product and something that is looks like real, we always use the other. We
Sorry.
always use the other as a I don't know, metaphor or a point of comparison. Just
Let me just trazer. A Nandita falou que tem uma dualidade muito grande na foto, porque é uma foto muito bonita e às vezes você, quando vê uma foto impressionante, você geralmente diz, nossa, parece um quadro. E a gente também é capaz de dizer o mesmo, né? Quando você vê um quadro que é muito bonito, que lhe impressiona, você diz que parece real. Ela chamou a atenção dessa ambiguidade, né, da imagem.
Yeah, thank you. So, it relates with the material, with the pleromatic fields, the concept of pleromatic fields, that our relations with the world are regulated through activity of pleromatic fields or affective fields. And it is also from Jan Walsiner's theory on semiotic mediation system. So that if you want to learn more, I won't read what is written here, but you can get to know by yourself. Mm-hmm. So, and maybe you have experienced something like that, something similar. You have so much to say about something. For instance, if you see that sunset, or if you experience something. You know, for instance, when I started with the topic of creativity, I had a feeling that there is so much to say, and if I then tried to say something about that, I didn't have a words, which means that I was just like very emotional in relation to the topic. Yeah, very like emotional and very inspired, but it was very difficult to verbalize. So that you may experience that feeling when you are inspired and when you are creating something. And now I demonstrate you a few photos. These are made by one of the art students. And do you recognize what is here? It's the same element.
it's like a heart.
Yes, it is heart. It is heart. And she's these are her little sculptures, and she said that I, from my point of view, demonstrate very well the power of the feelings, and maybe the feelings that is very difficult to verbalize. But in her case, she had an idea why she is making these heart sculptures all the time. This is something, and she said that she really likes making hearts, and you see different hearts, and she said that when she's doing that, then or when she has to do something, then her hands start immediately make these little hearts, and she also said that this is somehow very like a intimate topic for her, and that it gives a good feeling when she makes these little sculptures, and that it is related to her relationships and the grief process as well. And at the same time, these hearts give the feeling of warm, or warming feeling. So I think that this is example of how something that inspires us, we may not be very sure what it is, but it somehow it comes out. And in her case, this takes the form of little hearts. In some sense, it is a schematization of experience. Yeah. And now I would like to another topic that catches my attention. This is one of the amateurs who shared her experiences with me, and she's doing carpet. And she's, you see, this is very large carpet. she felt that she's going on and it continues. She didn't know when to stop. She liked what she was doing, and at one point she thought that maybe I should stop, and because floor was smaller than the carpet, but she really enjoyed it, and I think that this is also your experience. You don't know when to stop, and if you are an artist, then maybe you can relate with this experiences of Estonian art students. Funny, but your artwork is actually never ready. But in general, this moment is difficult to recognize. I would like to say that then I feel satisfied, but that's not always the case. So it's, but what captures my attention was that, that they are not, they don't have like, they don't know how to describe that moment, so that they continue, they talk about the feelings, and somehow they understand that it's ready. It is easy. When I am satisfied with it, then the work is good and ready. Another said, it is difficult question for me because I have often had trouble to notice when it is time to finish my creative artwork. I have ruined many of my works because I have spent too much time working on them, and the work has lost the freshness that it could have. Or usually I understand it when I have achieved previously set the goal or visual image of my work. But if it is more like a process-based and without a plan, then it is rather intuitive when I realize that the work is ready. Or I think others' opinions have never affected me that much, rather my own criteria, and somehow one moment I feel that the work is good now. I think this is very interesting, that you don't know, but you feel it. And now from my point of view, this is related with this activity of pleromatic fields. And there is a good saying that the artwork process is always ready. Artwork in process is always ready. And how she describes the situation, the process expands up to some point and then begins to shrink. So there is an explanation when this culmination is reached. And yeah. And to summarize everything, I said that be creative, express your uniqueness. No, not this way. This is also. Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Be creative, express your uniqueness. No, not this way. This is what artists who share their experiences, self-reflections, self-expressions with others, what they encounter. And this process, it involves others that guide the process of creation. There are, for instance, institutional factors like a professor, teachers, other students, or clients, their imagined expectations. And there is a big difference if they do the creative work for themselves, then they are not so stressed, they feel relaxed. But if they imagine others' expectations or responses, the situation changes. So, and they also mentioned many times that they are stressed, they feel tension in their body, they are restless. And this is also part of process of creation. And of course, both culture, even these not the restrictions, but guides that choose us to paint in a certain way, to consider these canons, art canons, so that we are even not aware of these cultural signs or guides that affect us. So, and another subtopic, but I finish here. Because as I said, I only can focus today on few aspects. And this pleromatic sign, pleromatic fields, this is interesting. This is in many reasons. So, yeah, thank you.
Oh, I had so many things to say, but thank you very much, Capri. We asked the lecturers to give short lectures so that later on we could debate them a little bit, discuss them. So we would like to actually move on to the next lecture, is it? So that we can have a joint discussion afterwards, okay? So I'd like to call our friend Kevin Career to come here. Thank you very much, Capri.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a slight change of program, so.
Okay.
So that we are not late.
To put on YouTube.
Oh, yeah. You can figure that out.
Esse microfone, vou botar de fazer assim, esse microfone, porque tá muito.
É o máximo. Vem explicar você.
It's Jefferson and Washington, or Washington and Jefferson?
Washington.
Yeah, because you changed college.
But the one I go to is
Oh, really?
actually,
So, I'm not
we're kind of future forward.
So,
Currently paid by Washington University.
no, it's on the.
Yeah.
But it's on the. I'm not.
Well, we are going to a vertical change of topic now, from creativity to politics.
Yeah. Probably jump a little bit more.
It's working.
Yeah.
Everything's fine. So I should go closer.
Yeah.
The
Okay.
camera is.
Yeah.
It's okay.
So, welcome, Kevin. It's really nice to have you here, and we'll move on to your talk now. Muito obrigada, professor Kevin, também. A gente vai fazer uma palestra mais curta para depois o Dani, para a gente poder discutir um pouquinho, gente. Obrigada.
Come close to the microphone.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today. And so today I would like to talk a little bit about what eventually has become a book, Psychology and Policy, Redefining Politics Through the Individual. And I started thinking about this because this work comes from my postdoctoral experience working in the United States House of Representatives for 1 year, where we actually had a delegation from Brazil, Joania Wapenchina, Erica Coquet, and Fernanda Melchiona came to the United States for a little bit. And out of this experience came a profound realization for myself, because what we see in this photo is the outcome, the product. But what we don't see in this photo is the process. For my congresswoman, I wrote her speech for this event. You know, I wrote her bills. I told her who to vote for. I said, I helped organize this meeting along with the staff of the Brazilian delegation and a lot of nonprofits. And this process that led to this amazing meeting between two indigenous leaders of our two countries is untold, unstudied, and unacknowledged. I also find myself relatively identityless. I am a trained cultural psychologist under Jan Walsner, but being part of the American system, I've also have to kind of balance this like need for experiments and quantitative statistics. And so I am both, I hate my quantitative colleagues because they don't think about theory, and I struggle sometimes with theory because I want to see that evidence of the work that we do. So what I think about is this weird borderland between where is the theory and where is the evidence. But I hope by the end of this short talk, we can at least think a little bit about why that horizontal writing is particularly important for thinking how can cultural psychology tell us something about politics, but then also take that and have a little bit of vertical writing and think where can we kind of move forward if we are thinking in a more cultural psychological lens. So in order to start talking about that, it might be nice for us to just have a general understanding of what it is that I'm talking about. So my field, political psychology, is just, I'll define it as a study of values, policy, and power dynamics. And what that means is that we generally think about content, so that's how does group A differ than group B on some measure? And that could be something like ideology. And ideology is this fascinating concept: white supremacy, feminism, neoliberalism, capitalism, yet we belittle it down to just on a scale of 1 to 7, 7 being conservative and 1 being liberal. Where do you place yourself? And what it does is it, one, fails to consider these nonpartisan ideologies. What does it mean to be a feminist, but also the development of that. How does one over time become more and more of this ideology, and how do those ideological processes kind of develop within an individual? And also for what purpose do these ideologies exist? Those questions are all kind of ignored just to get to the answer of where do you fall? And so there's very little focus on the process of ideology and most of political psychology. So for example, an individual who in the United States is wearing this "Make America Great Again" hat, while at the same time underneath the hat is a sticker that says "Made in China." And so how does, there is one thing to ask, like, would you wear this hat? Well, it's a very different thing to think, how does the individual have this deep psychological kind of complex of trying to think through the negotiation between what's on the front of their hat and then what's underneath, right? And so holding these political beliefs is not something to predict, but instead it's something being used by individuals at every moment for certain purposes against certain individuals for certain times. And so to think in a cultural political psychology, we really want to start thinking indeed not about the outcomes of politics, but instead the processes that bring us to understanding the intertwining action of values, policy, and power dynamics. And in order to do that, I want to quickly kind of highlight 3 places where I think cultural psychology can kind of add on to our understandings. And the first is through imagination. And so again, we're going to kind of do like this is the products, here's the process, process. So generally we might say, well, if some law is passed, then what happens to some individual? But it fails to consider the imaginative acts that individuals have in making meaning and responding to these laws. And there's also this idea that, we generally say, the blank leader's administration, or this person's law, or this person's bill. And that, as I kind of hinted at the beginning, may fail to acknowledge the secrets, invisible staff who has actually worked to create that. So when we're thinking about policy, we can think of something very simple as in America in the 1920s, we banned all consumption of alcohol. And so they call this the Prohibition era. And indeed, once we banned it, drinking went down about 70%. So a very big drop off in drinking in the 1920s. But then drinking started to increase again. And eventually very imaginative solutions came about to get around the law. Speakeasies came to be where there'd be like, illicit, secret ways to go and drink alcohol, like here in this building, photoed, or bribes between individuals and the police or individuals and the government, bootlegging. And so while the public policy is there to prohibit alcohol, by the end, when they repealed the ban of alcohol in the United States, everyone was already drinking anyway, right? That the law had actually just been ignored by everyone or broken through these private practices between citizens and the government. And we can find similar contradictions throughout the world. So in Iran, they do not prohibit both religiously, no consumption of alcohol, but it's also a crime to drink alcohol in Iran. Yet Iran has Alcoholics Anonymous and various treatment facilities for alcoholics. So while it is both a religious and institutional law, you shall not consume alcohol, still they acknowledge that the individual themselves can kind of evade that policy and they should be there to support them. In France in 2010, French politicians banned the wearing of the burqa, saying that covering your face is not French. And if you were to cover your face, you would be fined and subject to French citizenship classes to learn what it means to be French. And then COVID hits, and then the rule changed. Now everyone was required to cover their face, and to not cover your face was anti-French. And so again, we just have this kind of dialogue between what do we imagine we want our citizen to be versus, what do we not, and how does that kind of change over time? And indeed, again, as I said, there's this idea of the private policy that it is not just who do we see out there giving that speech, but it's also the staffers who build that speech. And so in this way, we can really see Balzner's idea of semiotic regulation, where the member hires people, so they are in charge, right? They're the boss. They say, you do these things, and your job is to tell me what to say, right? That they hire them to control them, right? And it's, I will pay you so you can tell me what I care about. And it's just this fascinating kind of like power dynamic that they both require each other in order to survive, yet only one really gets the news, the headlines, right? That's when we think of a president giving a speech, and we might analyze the text of President Barack Obama, pictured on the left, you would imagine that you're hearing from Barack Obama, but instead you're actually hearing from his speechwriter, pictured to his right, Jon Favreau. And this is a very interesting theoretical question for me, and thinking when we hear a speech, who are we hearing? What is that identity of the individual? And some have claimed this is like a trans individual identity. It's somehow the identity of both individuals at the same moment, kind of embodying both bodies, but still, you don't ever think of Jon Favreau, you only think of President Obama. I also want us to think a little bit of the power of not acting. So Katrine mentioned this, what is when non-X becomes X? For me, I'm curious of when X becomes non-X. And that is to say that in a classic sense, we want to know why, thank you. If we want to know how much you care when you do something, we're going to ask you, how much do you believe that what you do makes a difference? And what that requires is that doing something is the only way to make change. And it has to be something that we can see. And I disagree with that. And so when we think, we think about the apathetic voter, someone who's like, oh, I don't want to go and vote. I don't vote. That is one way to think about it, but instead, I think we can consider is that there are many reasons why someone may choose not to vote. And that is a very meaningful action to not right? And that someone could look in the future and say, I could act and vote, but then I will be disappointed. And so why should I harm myself in the future by voting and becoming disappointed? Or I could vote, but I already know, I've predicted what that future is. It is bad, and I'm okay with that. I would rather deal with that badness for now and not kind of engage. And those are very meaningful actions that are currently being really ignored and discounted, that you just don't care. Indeed, the person may care quite a bit. They're just choosing to not act in that moment. And so we can see that when we think about this idea of resistance, right? That's faced with discrimination and dehumanization, that there is this ability to try to find joy in that moment when there is no joy to be found. And instead, by finding that joy, we can look to the future, look to something better, something more meaningful for my future children. And so here, when power is at its lowest, when the individual feels like they can make no difference in the world, they may not act. And that itself is extremely psychologically interesting and is discounted. And I think cultural psychology can help us kind of think through, well, what is the process of not acting? What does that look like? Instead of only thinking about what is the process of protesting, instead, what is the process of choosing not to protest? And that leads us to think about meaning making as well. When we're thinking about this protest, the literature thinks about it that protesting is hobbyism. That is, you're protesting not because you actually want something to change, but because you consider it a hobby. Like, it's fun, right? Like, it's a social event, and that is terrible. That by protesting, you're wasting your time. The people who are going to get that power are not protesting. They are doing something else. They're volunteering. They're building relationships. And they speak to protesting as this very negative thing. But instead, I think, again, this is falling on political psychology's focus on the outcome. What is the outcome of a protest? The outcome seems to be not much. But instead, if you think about, well, what is the process of protesting? What does that mean? What does that do for us? There's a large psychological benefit to protesting. There's that emotional release, right? There is this, politics is very ambivalent, right? It's ambiguous. Like, who do I even talk to? If you feel like you don't have a voice, you don't know who to turn to, you don't understand how a law works, why would we expect there to be a product at all, right? That your power is at the lowest it could be. And so again, we shouldn't expect you to vote or to do something. Instead, we should see you do something that would traditionally not be an action, like protest, right? Something that is more emotional, that is more future oriented. And indeed, if there is a hobbyist, then that hobbyist is probably the elected official themselves, since they are performing this idea that is not necessarily who they are, right? It is instead the many staffers, here are the other postdoctoral fellows with me on my postdoctoral year, who are working behind the scenes, unacknowledged, writing their speeches, right? These are the people who truly have the power, not the people on TV, right? So if you want to make change, call up your congressperson and then be like, I want to speak to your staff. I don't want to speak to the person, right? Like, the person who you want to see is not the person in front. Instead, it's actually the person behind the scenes. And this requires us to think that this public policy is actually very private, right? It's hidden, it's behind us. And while we might study the psychological consequences of something very public, like going to war, we have yet to really consider what are the private consequences of going to war. And so Walsner talks about this, that he says, quote, I have yet to find a study in psychology of people who make arms, be it the rifles, bayonets, tanks, drones, or landmines, some manufactured even in the form of children's toys. Now, we're not thinking about the consequences of the people behind the scenes who are making these weapons of war. Instead, we've really only thought about, what does it mean to go to war, without truly asking, what does the process of going to war look like? And so that is when our power is low, product is not the goal, right? It is the emotional release that is more likely the goal and what we care about. And the process of protesting then, that hobbyism that political psychology wants to call it, is just as important as the outcome of protesting, potentially even more so. So with the little bit of time I have left, about 12 minutes, I like to kind of highlight some different ways in which I've tried to apply cultural psychology to political psychology. Noting that because I am in this weird identity mix, everything I do is weird and crazy, but I think it's fun. The reviewers don't. So we're gonna, depending on time, we'll see how it goes. I have 3 different kind of examples of where we can see the border between cultural psychology and political psychology, and where do we identify that process between the two. So first, I want us to think about this idea of imagination. And indeed, I want us to think about this idea that can you imagine meeting someone who is not who you imagine? So to explain that, a poll in the United States showed that 43% of Democrats and 48% of Republicans imagine that the other side is their enemy, not just a political opponent. And so they both have this kind of idea in their heads that you are the enemy. But now that we know that, there's also something else going on. That is, we are now thinking, hey, wait, you think I'm the enemy, right? That there's this kind of like dual layer here, that it's not just I think you're the enemy, but you think I'm the enemy. How terrible of you. And this kind of devolves into a lot of things, such that, for example, Democrats and Republicans on opposite sides dehumanize each other, right? We'll say they're half as evolved as I am. But then when we think about what the other side is imagining of us, we actually make it a lot worse. So we'll say, oh, I think they're half as evolved, but they think I'm only 30% evolved, right? That we kind of have exaggerated it even more. And let's see, click. There we go. Oh geez, what's happened? I clicked too fast. Okay. All right. Here we go. This is the problem of switching to a different. Okay. Regardless, research doesn't do a good job handling this. We can just say that. Basically, they just have someone come in and they're like, hey, by the way, that's not true. And the participants are left just being like, oh, okay, I still think it's true. But instead, what if we have us on the left and we have this belief that they think I'm 30% less evolved, and you meet someone who says, I disagree. Right? Like you disrupt the imagination process. You have someone say, oh, well, I think this, and then have them meet someone who says, that's not true. Here I am. I don't think that. And so what we do, we're going to very quickly go by this, is that we ask people to report things about themselves, their age, their political party. We have them then kind of rank their imagination, like what do you imagine the most? And then they're going to meet someone. And so what they do is they meet this person, Casey, who happens to be the same age as them, of the opposing political party, who either agrees and confirms our imagination or disagrees and disrupts our imagination of whatever we said we most believed. And so what that means is, say I am a Democrat, and so I get this list of things, and I'm told, what do you believe the most? What is in your imagination? And so as a Democrat, I would say, Republicans think all Democrats want us to remove all police funding, right? I believe that. All Republicans think Democrats want to take away police funding. And so then what I do is I rank order it. So I say, this is my top held imagination. And once I have that, I then meet a person who is 30 years old, and they are a Republican, because I'm a Democrat, who either agrees or disagrees that Democrats want to remove all police funding. And so what this does is it ends up with there's a lot of different combinations of who Casey becomes for our participants. But what I want us to notice is that we ask them, write a message to Casey. Right? Just say hello, talk to Casey. And then we look to see what words they're using to figure out, what did you say? Is there certain words that are more predictive of you being meeting someone who disrupts your imagination versus someone who doesn't? And what we see is that when Casey disagreed, when Casey changed our imagination, we see that there's some frustration appearing that you are perfect, you changed my belief, and you still voted for the wrong person. I hate you, right? Like there's this interesting process occurring that we're trying to understand more of what happens when we disrupt that process, when we find what it is that you're imagining, and then make you meet someone who says no. I also look at this idea of graduate unions, so graduate students in the United States. Some of them are trying to unionize. And what is particularly interesting for me is that generally what we think about when we're thinking about collective action like unions, we're thinking that you have to have this kind of group-based identity, right? You have to identify with the group in order to want to protest for the group. But for unions, the identity is the goal, right? Like I want you to identify at the end as a union worker. And so it's not that you have to start at having an identity, it's indeed at the end of the process, you should have this identity. And while there are some questions of like why we are protesting, there's also this problem of what happens when you don't. What happens when you don't want to put in the work? When you say, yeah, I'm supportive, but I'm really busy right now, so can you just like do it yourself? That'd be great. And so when we talk to people and they express this, right? They say there are certain things that people will say that will just piss me off, like thank you for all the work you do. I hate that because their gratitude is useless. What we need is their action, right? So here, and the organizers are speaking about how it's very annoying to see their friends not act. It's been harder to talk to the people who don't act. They don't want to respond to, do you want to tell me about why you don't participate in your union? But what it does show is that there's these relational challenges in the collective action process that are being ignored. Both the individuals trying to engage with those who don't want to protest, as well as the consequences of being that person who does protest, right? And so here, Lucy talks about the fact that she can't have normal friend conversations with her colleagues anymore because every time she's like, hey, what's up? They're like, oh, what do you want now about the union? And she was like, I just wanted to know if you wanted to get a beer, but I guess not. And so here's this question of this primary or secondary control. Do you feel empowered to take action, or do you not feel empowered? And that itself is a choice, right? That you are choosing not to act. And how can we understand not just collective action, but collective inaction? And I think that inaction piece is particularly theoretically interesting, as well as other methods of studying unionization that are also frequently overlooked, such as what is the process of trying to stop a union from occurring? So what is the process of, in the United States, we call it union busting, right? That the administration doesn't want them to unionize, they don't want to bargain. And so what is that like? What is the experience, the psychological kind of process going on for someone who is actually trying to disrupt and stop the union from occurring? And finally, I would like us to think a little bit about memorials, though I know that most of this work comes from Wagner and Bresco de Luna, but I've been thinking about their project since 2017, and I finally got to do something with it this year, so I just had to be like, don't tell Brady yet. I'm going to let him know very soon that we've been able to do this for him. So generally, when we're thinking about memorials, we think about them as either experiential, and so here is the 9/11 memorial in New York, where there's nothing really there, right? It doesn't represent anything. It's just a fountain. It's kind of left for the individual to make sense of what this memorial means. And that's very different than the statue of Abraham Lincoln in the Lincoln Memorial, which is very clear, right? He's very large, he's foreboding, the writing all around him of his speeches, right? It's telling us what we should know. It's giving us that master narrative of what should I take away from this memorial, while these undefined master narratives, these experiential memorials, don't tell us what we want to know. They leave it up to us to make our own meaning. And what I did a long time ago was I went across Yelp and collected 96,000 reviews of memorials. And yeah, very, very large quantity. And what we did is we used a software to basically say, what kinds of words are you using when you leave a review at a memorial? And does that differ on the kind of memorial that it is? What is the psychological process of visiting the memorials as a person who goes on Yelp or TripAdvisor and writes their review down? So we had a wide spread of memorials, most are in the US, some in Europe as well. And basically what this just says is that the more negative you wrote, the more negative words you wrote, the more experiential the monument was. Indeed, like a 1% increase in negativity, there was a 19% increase. You were probably talking about a experiential memorial. And so there's some negative affect, some negative emotions coming through when we're thinking about these more experiential, I don't know what I was supposed to feel, I'm mad that they didn't just tell me what to feel. There's some interesting psychological process that we can quantify and kind of give evidence to Brady's idea that indeed there is a difference between a traditional and a experiential memorial. And so I know that one was very quantitative, but the goal of that is to say that our theory still comes first. That first we think about the theory, and then we can, if we need to, try to see, can we see the evidence of that? And here, I think in Brady's work, we can start with his theory, and then look to the evidence and find it both in the qualitative work that he does, as well as the quantitative work that I did here. So overall, we need to push for a political psychology of processes. In doing that, we need to think about private policies instead, be that the silent staffer, the rebellious or not rebellious citizen. And that's because of that, the apathy does not signal inaction, right? But instead, we're adjusting to the environment. I don't want to change the environment. I just want to become comfortable in what I am currently facing. And so for me, as I think about this, the kind of guiding questions that I have for this week are thinking about things such as the listed here. And with that, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Yeah, we are going to call Professor Denis Boulanger to the stage. To the stage? Yes, it is a stage. So that we can make a short break afterwards. I found it very interesting, Kevin, because I think that inaction idea is very challenging for us. Comentei que a ideia de inação aqui, e eu acho que está bem ligada no Brasil ao o ódio à política. São coisas que são muito fortes, eu acho, aqui nos últimos anos. Tá bom para a gente explorar bastante aí nos próximos debates.
Claro, sí.
This one?
Yeah.
I should put on the YouTube just 1 minute.
Somewhere under the snow.
This is where I live.
Yeah.
Agua. Ah, okay. I will survive. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
Everything's okay.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. How are you?
Welcome, Damien.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. How are you? Yeah, I want to hear it more loudly. How are you? Are you asleep or what? Now you are not convincing. Let's try it third time. Hey, everyone. How are you? Okay. That was your coffee. Yeah. So here is a concept that I am developing, but I'm moving beyond. The more I progress, the more I go beyond the concept of zone of proximal development. So I have to create a new concept. So I don't know it yet, but it will emerge. This is a suggestion of Jan. Then you create your own concept. And I live somewhere under the snow. I don't know where because there are too much snow. So maybe you tell me where I live, okay? So it's an emerging model that I introduced. I've not written the book yet because related to capturing presentation, it's like when you do a thesis, you don't know when to stop. So now I don't know when to start. I want to reflect on process as an agency and going further together with you. So I hope we will have the time to discuss it after. So the content here is an impulse structure of activity, so that when teacher impose a structure of activity, but what happened when the child tried to lead his own dance? Like if you think of a structure like, when you learn to dance, you can learn a precise path, right? I don't know how to say it in English, but the precise step, but you can also improvise. So the teacher will teach you precise step, but you need to improvise. So when you improvise, you construct your own zone of proximal development. So this is the basic idea. Zone proximal as leaded by yourself movement, but this is still dialogical because two people have their own zone of proximal development, so we co-escalate the mountain. I push you further beyond your limits. It enables me, myself, to go beyond my limit, and we escalate it. So this is the presentation today, okay? And I will conclude on historicity. Are you ready? Yeah. I'm sorry, Are you ready? Yeah. I am not. Yeah. So an impulse structure. So I will start with an example. Okay. I will make it very concrete. I try. Okay. So it's a class in which I made a participatory observation. It's a class that is not even in a school. It's a class that is in another building because those children are to have two behavioral problem. They throw chair like that. You want me to show you what is throwing chair? Okay. So, and the activity that I observed and that I want to present to you has this direction. What is the direction of the activity? Is you, imagine I am the teacher, you children will have to consolidate this. I want you, I teach you last week how to identify letters
and words from the story. Now you will practice alone, quiet, and sit down. Please just apply to consolidate this. This was the goal of the activities, and the means is stay alone and apply what you should have already learned. So the context is a strict rule and very structured activity. Okay. So the teacher used explicit pedagogy and explicit way to manage behavior. It's like she will display the structure of the activity, what has to be done, what are the rules, and she will apply consequences. So it's a very strict structure, okay? So the goal was to organize children. But here, you see, it's not the children who organize themselves. They do not learn from this how to organize themselves, so how to lead their own dance in their zone of proximal development, okay? So I want to organize something for them, so they are not learning, okay? And I do this to secure the children, because they will feel safe. There were some autist children. The teacher told me, yeah, they need this. I think that is the teacher who needed this, to feel in control, right? And what were the mechanism? Exercising, so practicing, using a story as a context. So she said to me, they will be in their zone of proximal development because there is a story. This is structural, right? Okay, is it your zone of proximal development that you are trying to control, or their zone of proximal development? So when she says to me they will be in their zone of proximal development, what does it mean? What is this something? Is it a zone? Is it their zone? So how can it be their thing if it's externally defined? And is it a thing? Because, you know, she planned a structured activity, and the children does not evolve really through the activity because they cannot lead it. So it's a fixed thing, and it's a thing from the outside. So it's not a process, it's imposed, it's not their thing. So are they feeling in? I don't think so. So now I will talk about one children. One of the children was constantly moving his leg and was underperforming. Teacher reaction. The teacher reinforced the structure. She said, calm down to the activity, don't speak to anyone. Then the child moved his leg even more and began to do a crisis and to show, you want me to do it? No. Okay, exactly. Then she said, he has a behavioral problem. I have to be even more strict. Yeah? So I have to fit him in the structure even more. Yeah? So the thing is that he has no agency. It was a very, very strict frame, and he reacted. So for me, his reaction was a message that he was trying to say about something that is not going well. Now we will look at it. I will show you a schema. So I made an observation at the child's attempt to lead his own process by modifying the structure, and this is the more important things for them, okay? So I repeat, the teacher was imposing a structure, the child did not like it, react, the teacher was making the structure even more strict, and here I will show you something, okay, constructive that I noticed through my observation. You are following me? Okay. So, the children who move his leg is here, and he's sitting on a balloon because we have to adapt the structure to the child, but it's a limited adaptation. It's the teacher who gives herself the impression that she's adapting, doing something for him, okay? And she said, like I said to you before, you remember when you were young, I said to you, the teacher said, stay on your chair and work alone without speaking. The child was underperforming, and he was sometimes crying because he did not like underperforming. He felt like bad about it. Then the teacher left the room, but I was still there, like an observant, And what I noticed is that these children stand up, look at the other child, and he explained to him the task. And he said, this is what you have to do. And while he was explaining, he was doing more than what the teacher asked him. He was over-performing because I was looking at what he did on the sheet while explaining. So he was deviating from the task. So he was deviating for the structure to construct his own structure. Okay? And he was sending a message. He was saying, those are my own catalysts. Those are the conditions that I need to grow. I needed to be more informal, less strict. I need to lead a bit. I need to move, body, stand up. And I need solidarity. I need to feel that I help someone. Okay? And at this moment, he was overperforming. The teacher reaction, when the teacher saw this, the only thing that she saw is a bad deviation from her own structure. She said, he is a deviator. I was instead thinking that he is sending a message about what he wants to do. He was improvising his own dance. And what I did is that when I look at those catalysts, I try to use that to guide intervention. So it's not a technical procedure, but it worked. So the day after, I went back and I looked at the child like that and I said, I don't understand the task. Can you explain it to me? He explained it to me. He was overperforming. And then I went into a room where he learned how to manipulate things. And I did the same, and the professional was amazed. But this is so simple. Because the child speaking to me is like an invitation to dance with him. You want to lead his own things and showing us what are his catalytic conditions, and it works. They were amazed, but they did not understand what. And they were like, yeah, but I use this procedure. It's not about procedure. Cultural psychology guide intervention to this kind of principle, I think. So what happened here is that a structure was imposed by the teacher. The goal was consolidating something. The actual level was at this precise moment when I start the activity, the child was not able to do something. It was not considered. So the teacher said, I want them to consolidate, to go beyond their actual level. This is the idea of zone of proximal development. And she was using a tail as a mediator, but it did not work because it was a fixed structure from the inside and there is no movement there. So the child here, when he was disorganized, he was sending us a message. But the teacher listened to herself, not to him. She was not empathic. He was speaking through his behavior about the inequality of the structure, but it was silence. Now I will go back to what I observed, what I showed you. The previous schema. When the child went up, he was deviating from the task. So here you have a prescribed dance like that. So you have to go in this direction. He instead tried to improvise. Yes, so he was like feeling in the momentum, and he was trying to actualize his latent potentials that are related to the catalytic condition that he creates for himself and that he invited me to enact with him. He was inviting me to dance with him. And he was, look at this arrow here. He was going beyond on two perspectives. First, over-performing, so going beyond the goal of the teacher, but also integrating other dimensions, cognition and socioaffectivity. Socioaffectivity because he felt that he wanted to be in relation with someone, feeling that he can help, because he received help, but he never is the one who helps others. But those are invisible to the teacher. So here you have the horizontality. you integrate other dimension here to go further. So the child was doing the job better than the teacher because he was creating his own dance, his own zone of personal development. So here, a zone is something very alive. And he speaks to us, he invites us to dance with him. And it happens in different circumstances. Here are two kids, okay? And what you don't see here is that there is a large bed, a small bed for two kids and a large bed for two grandparents, okay? So this is a king bed. Two grandparents are there, the children are here. The child take the lead by modifying the structure of the activity. And what happened at the end is this. The grandfather was pushed aside here, and the grandmother here. So yeah, so do you recognize her? Yeah. So sometimes it happens in our life that it gets organized, reorganized. So it happens in our daily life. And I have the permission to publish it. Not to publish, but to show it. So now I just want to go to the concept of causal of proximal development, and I will try to show you a video scene. No possibilidade, right? Yeah, okay. This one is on YouTube. Do you have internet here? Okay. Okay, so it's the sound is not important. What I want to show you. Yeah, so. No? Oh. Then after that, I have to go back to my. Let me show you. Yeah. So I did not think that internet will be slow. Okay. Here. Okay. So this guy here is speaking to the cameraman who asked him what is the task, and he said, "We are in a mentorship group. I am the oldest one of the two, and the oldest have to explain the task to the small children who has to execute, right? So this is a kind of vertical pairing. I explain, he executes, right? What does he learn about this? Is he learning something in the structure of activities? And maybe he will get bored by executing and there is no dialogue, but something spontaneous happens. They try to modify the structure of activity, and I will show you what happened, okay? Spontaneously. Because he said, this is what the teacher wants us to do. But because it's filmed on the camera, the teacher were like moving in different place and not supervising. So they have some freedom, like the teacher will leave the room. And what happened? Let's see here. Here, you see this shift like that. So the youngest one decided to explain to the other who executes, and the third one joined them. So they shift like that. So now he can learn to execute by explaining, and he can learn to explain by executing. By looking at him explaining, he can say, did I explain it correctly? I hear his word, it's not what I explained. And I'm trying to execute. I should have explained it differently. So he learned to execute, but he also learned to be a better, someone who explained better. Now looking at him, he learned to execute through explaining also. So I want now I'm close to the end of the presentation, but I want to analyze it with the schema. And I will just keep with exactly the same thing that I showed, that I explained, but through a schema. for those who are visual, right? Okay. Let's go back here. And this one, I guess. No, it's not this one. Sorry, obrigado, desculpa, something like that. Pardon. Yeah. Okay. So I call it co-escalating a mountain. So the oldest one, imagine that the oldest one is on limit, it's hard for him to explain. You know, you saw him explaining and he has some difficulties, right? So what if I execute in order to be someone who explains better? What if I do the opposite? So it starts by explaining, okay, you remember? Then shift by executing. Executing enable him to explain better. Are you following me? Okay. This is on developmental limit is explaining. It's hard for him to explain. Okay, this is the limit in his zone of proximal development. Here, the youngest, it's hard for him to execute. What now if I shift position and I try to explain? Will I learn to execute it differently? His limit is executing. So we will see how they both escalate this mountain, okay? So the youngest one explained, we saw it on the video. So putting into words is like looking at the situation from above. He was here, and it's like if he's looking at himself. While he explained, he looked at himself from above. So, did I execute correctly? So while he explained, he was thinking about what he was executing. So it's looking at himself from above, so learning from above how he executed before, okay? So he pushed himself up, but the thing is that the other one was listening, okay, to how he explained the task. So I see myself into you because you explain what I just explained to you. So I see if I put the good words in your mouth. So maybe I did not explain it correctly. So it makes me go up. Now I execute. And I reflect and discuss with you while I execute about, you just mentioned this thing that I have to do, but this is now not how I explain it to you. And what I am executing is a bit different. You see, there are some nuances that you did not explain, and there are nuances that I forget to explain to you. So what does it do? It's make me being a better explainer, someone who explains better, because I reflect now by executing I execute something that I did not explain correctly, and that you did not explain correctly, and I have to show you, now I am executing someone, but I did not mention it well, okay, because, do you understand what I mean? Okay, so I am executing, and I'm saying to you, now you did not put the good words because I did not explain it to you correctly. So now I am criticizing how I explained it to you first, but by saying to you, you do not put the good words, I show you that you did not understand what has to be executed. So you will learn how to execute, and I will learn how to explain. And what happens is that we both learn to understand by creating a synthesis dialogically between explanation and execution. So the mountain is a synthesis, and the synthesis is understanding. Understanding entails execution and explanation. So it's a synthesis between both. And I will jump to how many minutes I have left? But after that, we have 30 minutes to discuss? Okay. Yeah. So a child and an elder in a mentoring activity discuss about the actual curriculum. So an elder was trying to help children with mathematics, okay? And they start to have a discussion about, yeah, but how do you do mathematical operation? When I was young, it's not like we did. We were more engaged. We had to do operation like that. Now you are using a computer. So they were discussing about what happened now and what happened before. So they were putting together their own historicity. I want to discuss just a bit about that, okay? So what the child see is only this. The child perspective is the actual curriculum. He knows more about the actual curriculum, the actual practices than the elder. He knows it in more detail, but we know only this. This is the surface of the phenomenon, like a phenotype, okay? The elder knows less in detail about the actual practice and curriculum, but has a deeper understanding because she has seen many curriculum before, right? And she saw the move from one curriculum to another. So she has the phenotype aspect. How did we end up having this curriculum, right? So she can bring this aspect so the child can make teacher learn about how is it useful today because you know more in detail, and she can make him having a more historical perspective to relativize, right? So historical deepness and relativity, and they are discussing about it. So the issue of the discussion was using computer now as replacing engagement. So the other was saying each time there is a curriculum, it makes you more passive, right? Less engaged. So she brought the historical aspect of the historical constructions of passiveness, less engaged, and she was bringing forth the importance of engagement on the other side. The children was bringing more actuality. In a quick society, how is it still useful to do it? And she was bringing slowness. You have to be engaged slowly. So the idea here is that the negotiation between two zones of proximal development. So the elder did not know something that the child know. So the child knows something that I don't. So he makes me move further in my zone of proximal development, and the elder knows something that I don't. So it happens across negotiation of two ways to see historicity. So it is not, the point is that it's not only dialectic between two people, but it entails culture, historicity. So there is a negotiation of historicity here. And this picture is international, right? So what has to be negotiated? They seem happy. Well, I think that they grow from their experience, but the bed got smaller. So I repeat, they grow, but the bed got smaller. So maybe I will arrive at a theory of expansion versus condensation, growing by making the bed smaller. But it's for another presentation. Is that finished?
Thank you so much, Danny, for this reinterpretation of these developmental theories. That's also interesting to think about. Actually, we are going to take a short break. Yes? Yeah, we can have a coffee break outside between 20 and 30 minutes. And then we'll come back for questions and debate, okay? Thank you, everybody. Vamos fazer 20 minutos de intervalo agora para a gente debater depois um pouquinho as palestras.
But I wrote something for using analyzing movement in painting. What is this thing about? Yeah, I will take a copy. Yeah, please.
retomar a sessão de hoje e vamos abrir para as questões, né? E em seguida nós temos uma pequena homenagem à nossa professora Ana Cecília. Então eu peço que vocês permaneçam, né, na sala, no auditório. Então, Lia fará a mediação para aqueles que não falam inglês, enfim, ela pode fazer a tradução. E, então, now we open to the questions and comments.
Would you like to come and sit here?
Yeah.
Kathy,
And Danny. Oh, okay. They want to sit here. That's fine. That's fine. Yeah.
I think this is more
Okay, people.
You see how I am more tall. I am taller than him.
all of you. By the way.
So the first one will be Isabel.
I tried.
Eu vou fazer a pergunta em português, ok? Eu gostaria, eu sou da escola de dança, sou professora lá da escola de dança da UFBA, e eu fiquei muito curiosa com a metáfora com a dança e improvisação. E a gente tem, assim, vários princípios e técnicas de improvisação específicas, enfim, mas eu gostaria de saber um pouco mais sobre a ideia de Denis, sobre dança e improvisação e a zona proximal de aprendizagem ou de desenvolvimento, como chama, né? Porque, por exemplo, E eu fiquei pensando, buscando uma analogia, e entendi que, por exemplo, o contact improvisation, que é uma dança de contato, tem muito a ver com essa modulação e dessa criação conjunta. Por fim, conversando com Virginia e com Pina, eu acabei, né, porque a gente tem que trazer para a nossa zona proximal também para tentar entender o pensamento do autor. Então, eu queria que ele falasse um pouquinho mais sobre essa relação entre dança e improvisação e a zona proximal. Obrigada.
No, I did not understand.
She would like you. She's a dance professor at the university, and she was really curious. It's not working. She got curious about that analogy, the metaphor of dancing and improvisation.
No.
Because in the dance field, you have techniques of improvisation, contact improvisation. So maybe if you could expand a little bit more on it, because improvisation in dance, it's a movement of interaction between dancers, between people. So one person does things, the other person responds with their
In
body.
some technique, contact improvisation specifically.
Yeah. So she would like you to expand a little bit more on that idea inside that zone of proximal reality. That's not here. See?
Well, I was drinking a bottle of water. That is, I was dancing, and I was using this concept as a theorization. So it was very vertical. So to make a relation with the Young's perspective. So I'm not an expert at all in dance theory. I read it, of course, a bit on that. But the basic idea, of course, it's a metaphor. But when I was in a course, dance course, we had to learn some step. And then during a certain moment when the teacher was not watching, we began to improvise to deviate from those steps. But then when she watched again, we came back, and what I saw is that I was better at those steps because I deviated, because I create other steps, but those other steps were more like a kind of personal synthesis. They were the same step, but made in a different way. So the idea is that the zone of personal development, it's a zone. It's a zone, and usually it's framed by the teacher who said you will go there with the help of a more advanced other. But she framed it, but she's not listening to what emerged. So what was emerging, like me when I deviated, in the child experiment that I show you, is catalytic condition, the own condition of the children. So those conditions is what the child's need to go further and to progressively move forward. And because when you move forward, when you are on the move, you create an horizon that is always constantly going forward with you. So movement creates the environment of the structure, exactly like with dance. So when you dance, you are part of the context, and you created the context by dancing. So the idea is to use the metaphor of movement. So, but I can talk more, but I think that I responded to your question, did I? Okay, thank you. Is there any other fans of me here? Joking. Yeah, there are other.
With as far as it's going to go.
Pessoal, quem tiver questões a fazer, eu peço que já fique aqui e a gente passa o microfone, tá bom?
I would just only like to add something to your question, because I think that in the zone of proximal development, as he said, there is always a more advanced peer to interact with you. And I think when you are in contact improvisation, you don't assume that anyone is superior in knowledge.
Yeah.
So you are always interacting. So that is, I think, will be an interesting difference, you know?
Yeah.
Não, esse quando liga.
Ela vai fazer to turn the volume down.
Ela traduz e depois eu faço pra você.
Ah, tá bem.
Eu acho que é melhor se você fique vestido.
Verdade.
See, if you all come down,
Yes.
it will
Yes.
take
Now,
much
yes.
less time. You'll be able to
Yeah.
move and dance together.
She's telling us to come to step down. Let's step down.
Thank you.
Up, down, left, right.
Não precisa, é só para eles. Só para eles. Here.
Another one was down.
Gente, vocês ficam aqui, quem tá assistindo não vai ver ninguém na mesa.
But it's okay, no problem. I changed it.
De costa.
You can
Desenho
record.
It's recording the sound.
You are in the. Okay. Go ahead.
Yes.
Meu nome é Celina.
Sim.
Oi, meu nome é Celina e eu fiquei. Tá. Eu fiquei muito intrigada com o seu trabalho. Qual é o nome dela?
Kathleen.
Catrina? Eu fiquei curiosa com o termo. Eu sou da graduação, então eu não sei se eu já vi esse termo. Eu perguntei para os meus colegas da graduação e eles também não conhecem. Campos pleromáticos. O Salvador já deve saber.
Essa é a sua pergunta?
Eu tenho mais uma, mas você pode fazer.
Bom, não, mas agora já falei.
Tá. E eu fiquei muito curiosa se há uma hierarquia ou uma intensificação de certas experiências no processo de criatividade. Como ela disse, é um processo, né, que depende da cultura, depende da sociedade, mas eu queria saber se há, como posso explicar, se há experiências, se há elementos que afetam muito mais na criatividade do que outros elementos.
Eu vou falar em inglês para as pessoas que não falam português.
So she's curious about the term pleromatic field, pleromatization process. She's curious about that term. She would ask you to comment a little bit more about that and contact her. And then she asked if you think there are some, of course, creativity is a process that is context-bound, culture, embodied in culture, but are there any specific elements that you think might impact more on that process, something that you identify especially in that creative process, is the process of creating things?
Thank you. Katrin. Katrin, jag vill ställa mig Katrin. Pleromatic refers to, according to that model by Jan Mansiner, it refers to... Yeah.
I can blame it on Jan.
Jan is guilty. But it refers to experiences that have generalized, and they are abstract. This is a level of abstracted feelings or experiences. You can't verbalize. You can't. You have a kind of access to these fields, but through feelings. But it is difficult to verbalize what exactly is there. It's so abstract and very hyper general. Yes. Yeah. So, and if you are interested more, then please, Jan Vazin has wrote a lot about that. Yeah, there is material. But the next question, is there something a specific elements that affects the most creative process? Very difficult to answer that. What is the most? I think that I have to refer to many elements, and this and this creativity process unfolds under the influence of different elements. But for me, it's at the moment difficult to say what is the most important. It's yeah. Yeah, I can't answer to that question. What is the most important?
Eu acredito, não sei, é uma hipótese, que talvez elementos que nos atinjam no dia a dia, coisas próximas a nós. Acho que eu vi uma aula de Boston sobre isso, por isso que eu estou
Você está falando de pleromatização.
Oi?
Acho que você já está falando de pleromatização.
Eu já sabia a resposta.
Qual é a ideia de você?
A minha ideia é que coisas que estão próximas a nós no dia a dia, coisas que nos atingem de certa forma, por exemplo, um café, um café assim que eu bebo na cantina da UFBA. Todo dia eu bebo um café com leite na cantina da UFBA. Só que tem dias que o meu namorado acorda muito mais cedo que eu e faz um café para mim. Então, para mim, isso me atinge bem mais do que um café que eu compro, sei lá, dou R$2,50 e compro. Então, quando ele, sei lá, faz alguma coisa assim por mim, eu sinto que é uma coisa mais próxima. E eu sempre tenho uma afetividade maior naquilo. Então, eu acho que aquilo me atinge, aquilo, sei lá, pode influenciar no meu processo do dia inteiro, entendeu? Tipo, o meu processo criativo na faculdade, ou fazendo um poema, ou dançando, enfim. Eu acho que é isso, né?
Seria bom traduzir já para inglês final.
Yeah. She said that she thinks it's an hypothesis that maybe things that are really close in mundane in a way, like a daily. And then she mentioned the example was she has coffee here every day, and this is something that is in her daily ritual here coming to university. But sometimes her boyfriend wakes up earlier and makes her coffee. And when he makes her coffee, that makes her feel in a really more intense way. It's a very intimate action that she thinks has a great impact on everything she does, everything she creates during the day. So the hypothesis would be something that is really effectively connected to you in your daily life. That's what she.
Yeah, sure, emotions and the change in the context. Yes, for sure. Because if you describe the situation, so one situation you drink coffee in one context, and then in another context, boyfriend drinks a coffee.
Yeah.
So that change in the context. Yes.
Yeah.
But I also think that why it is difficult for me to say point to only the most important element is because context changes, but the person is who is going to make sense of it. So it's not only the context, but as well as the way how you make sense of it.
But isn't that what researchers do? Sometimes, some kind of researchers, that they will reduce it to a small thing, one most important thing, give it a label, and I think that is what schematization probably
Yes, I agree.
And force you to put everything that you know about something in that little capsule. So in that sense, I think her question is kind of relevant for a larger understanding of the distinction between schematization and
Scleromatization.
Yana is sitting right there. And the function of these processes in meaning making.
Yeah. Yes, and to extend a little bit the way how I put my experience into the words, it will affect the way how I feel. It's like a circle.
Yes.
And if I make a mistake by choosing words, it comes back to me. It's like a circle.
Right.
Yeah, so that both schematization, dramatization, context, outside and inside, psychological, that they are connected. I would say thank you for your question. Yes, thank you.
Dá pra me ouvir? Oi, eu sou o João. E eu queria perguntar ao Kevin sobre como ele lida. Dá pra me ouvir? Eu queria perguntar ao Kevin sobre como ele lida com questões de incoerência. De pensando em como ideologia se apresenta como sendo coisas estáticas e unitárias, de que elas são óbvias de como sempre foram, mas que a gente vai ver no presente, nos processos, costumam ter contradições, incoerências, momentos nos quais a gente fez o que elas acreditam, por que elas apresentam, e de como isso também acaba casando com um pouco do que ele trouxe da questão de como uma lógica positivista de pesquisa também pede que você tenha algo que seja estático, que você consiga explicar facilmente, ao invés de falar de algo que é incongruente, incoerente.
João is asking, Kevin, where do you stand on incoherences regarding, for instance, having an ideology? Because you might think this is something, homogeneous and very steady, but you find people acting not completely according to that ideology. A feminist not being that feminist, or a conservative not being that conservative. So and he has to expand a little bit more on that. And he also related to, isn't that possibly related to that, quantitative, positivistic view on research? Because when you do research in such a way, maybe you are hoping for stable entities to be shown, and you cannot really show that.
Great question.
Yeah, thank you. Fantastic question. I would agree, right? Like that is indeed the problem that we are faced with, and I think potentially I forgot how you framed it, but I say I'm something and I act against that. Incoherence. Thank you. It speaks potentially our own inability to create a sign or explain my true feelings. Right? I just look out into the world and I see that sign. I'm feminist. Yeah, I guess I'll hold on to that and show everyone that this is what I am. But potentially, if we had a better, but I guess we don't ask anyone, well, what do you mean by feminist, right? And that is the underlying question. It's not just okay, I identify as this, but then how do you understand that, and what do you do to put that into practice as well, right? Because there's also the individual who says, I understand feminist as this, this, and this, and then you can point, well, your actions don't fit this, this, and this, and so then also facing that individual with how does your own understanding of feminism both then relate to like the societal understanding of it, as well as how does those dialogue with your own behavior. And indeed, I think we are, culturally incentivized to look for clarity when clarity just isn't there, right? It doesn't exist. I'm only thinking about this. I saw a quantitative paper, and they were studying feminism, and they had this very bizarre results, and they didn't want to think about any other explanations. And my comment to them was exactly, did you ask the participants what they meant by feminism? Because I imagine if you did, then you could easily, I don't want to say it, group people better, but you can have a better understanding of what it is that they were studying in the first place. And they did not want to engage with that question at all, right? They were scared to think that their research could be anything but what they were studying. And indeed, I think if we start asking, what is that individual understanding of this higher order construct, I think that will give us a better understanding of not only how that individual understands it, but then overall society at large, right? I think a lot of it is, we see that as well, at least in like the US, if you ask someone where does, the average person fall on this belief, they're very bad at it, and they are always over-exaggerating, right? So our own internal definitions of anything are inaccurate. And so it does help to turn to that individual and get the individual observation of how do you understand this thing, where do you fall, in order to have any understanding of what this greater construct is. So yeah, thank you. Great question.
Can I just ask right on the bat something about it, because if it's possible, right? Because what I think is that a category is very limited, and that you put yourself in a box. You say, I'm feminist, I am heterosexual, I am autist, or whatever. So when you do that, you cannot create another in yourself. You cannot create possibility for yourself. So you are only what you are. So when you meet another feminist who is a different kind of feminist, now she is helping you to deconstruct it, and she enables you to create an image in others, what you said, because there's a confrontation between what you thought about yourself in relation to a social representation, a category, categories and how it really happens in reality. So in relation to the variety, so this person will help you create another version of yourself and imagine others, like you said. So I want to know what you think about that, because the idea is to deconstruct category in order to be more close to what is reality. Reality is fluidity, is movement. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that gets us into a deeper problem as well, is that at some point, someone has to create that category, right? Even the researcher who's like reading an interview transcript, right, is going to say, they've made this description, but that still isn't how the individual may be understanding that conversation between one and another, right? You can imagine two people are talking and I agree, but in their heads they're like, what an idiot, you know, like I can't believe this person would say that. And so the problem, I think, also continues is that while the individual may be kind of reconstructing what their understandings of that category is that they box themselves into, it's still almost, I don't know how we reach and observe that and study it when we have to acknowledge our own positionality, that I'm approaching this interview with my own understanding of this category. And so when I hear two people talking about it, I'm still imposing my own categories onto it. So it's categories all the way down, I guess. Yeah.
Okay.
I have a question. It's not a question. It's like a comment. But I don't like the mic.
You don't like Mike?
It's for Danny. Danny, it's for you.
Yeah. Desculpa.
Okay. The process of deviation is not acceptable in the school.
Uh-huh.
I remember when I was a kid, I was not authorized to make these new things for understand the themes or to do the activities. The school makes limits to the student and restrict their learning.
Uh-huh.
It's
So you are saying that you kind of see yourself in what I illustrate, the role of the teacher who imposes structure, restrict. But so this is what you said. But do you have a question or? It's a comment. Like it's like you recognize yourself into this. So, but tell me, there are different ways to deviate. Did you deviate in your mind? Or are you still in the class all of the time? Because mind wandering, it's a kind of deviation, constructive deviation, and teacher will see it as a deficit attentive problems. So myself, when I was a child, I was always looking outside, imagine that the bird was my teacher, and it was kind of crazy, right? It's why I ended up crazy idea today. But I was deviating by looking there, by thinking in my mind, like closing my eyes. So, but I stayed there on the same place. So there are different ways to deviate. So were you deviating somehow by thinking about something else, or?
Deviate for me. I don't like the mic.
I don't like Mike.
Is the different way to think to make this thing positive, impositive, you know. So when I was in the school, I think different. So to learn different, you know. So when I say that to the teacher, it's not acceptable. Yeah.
Yeah.
You understand?
But the thing is that you can still do it. If you want to learn differently or to do a task differently, you can do it. You have your own margin of freedom. So did you use some margin of freedom? You can say to that teacher, okay, You don't like it, but I will still do it. So
Yeah.
did you deviate somehow?
Yes.
Yeah.
All the
And
time. All the time.
Yes, in the math class, principal. But for example, it's not acceptable. I take his like 0 not, but I comes to the same result the others.
Yeah, but
But their way is not acceptable.
Yeah, so your worry is good. Continue doing that.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's up.
It was funny when you were talking about like the teacher and setting up the very structured environment of, you know, work by yourself, identify the letters in the assignment. It made me think, because my first thought in my head was like, I would break students into groups and say, try to do this as a group. But then my next thought was the students would follow the structure presented. Is that when I put students into group work, they're like, okay, you do page 1, I'll do page 2, you do page 3, right? And they develop the structure themselves, even though I didn't tell them to, divvy up the work equally, or however. Like, in my head, it's gonna be collaborative, and then they say no, like very structured. I'll do this part, you do that part, you do that part, and so there, the teacher imagines and wants deviance because they don't give the structure. And in response, they create the structure themselves, right? So I thought I was like, that would work the same way if it was in groups. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, thank you. So your point is about the emergent structure.
Yeah.
Because when you group things, it still involves. Yeah.
Okay. Just I was. No, I can talk.
So you have to get up and then.
Yeah. So, I was remembering about that discussion that I had someone work with me at my house, a domestic worker. She was illiterate, but she developed a system, personal system, to write down the items that I should buy, for instance, or thing that she needed me to do. And she was totally capable to read that. I wasn't, but she knew. It was her particular system about write and read for herself and communicate to the other. It was efficient.
Yeah. She developed her own thing, yeah.
Creative.
Yeah.
Any more questions?
Lots of questions, but do we have time?
Yes,
Yeah.
the last one.
Yes.
Okay.
No, we have not.
Turned it off.
Direct.
It's not a question, actually. It's more comments, because while I was hearing you all, I made some association about creativity and all the research about how difficult it is for us to analyze what people are thinking, because we can just analyze how people are reacting.
Yeah.
And so I made this association because I think just as we lost about our creativity when people are demanding something for us, maybe it's easier for us to study the reaction anomalies, because people get more brave when they think that they are not being observed. And this is something interesting for me. And I asked about creativity because I think it's a little bit the same. When people are not being watching, they do the exercise more quickly, more easy. So it was just this comment, how I associate everything.
Thank you.
had a point about categories. And when you think of placing people in categories like you're high on something, or you're a feminist or not, or you're conservative or liberal, the label or the category of poverty is even more problematic, because do you say I am poor? It is often a label that you don't associate with yourself, however poor you may be. So, when you have categories that have implications that are political, it becomes even more slippery to understand. And I am always amazed when people talk about 70% of the world is poor and therefore, because that comes from such an ignorance about the way people live and how they, you're worried that, because it's a definition that emerges from a belief of what people don't have rather than what they have.
Yeah.
So,
well, are we okay with questions? So I'd like to close this session thanking you. Thank you, Danny. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you. Obrigada a todo mundo que ainda está aqui com a gente. A gente vai passar para a parte mais importante da nossa manhã de hoje.
So, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being here. And você vai passar? Aqui tá obrigado.
A gente pode botar no nosso celular. Deixa aí. Precisa de sim. Deixa eu ver, o visitante. Deixa eu ver.
Antes de botar, eu vou falar rapidinho. Apresentar o vídeo, tá? Você me ajuda? O vídeo está aqui embaixo, por favor. Você está no controle emocional, eu no controle de algo. Estou agoniada com as pessoas não conseguem chegar.
Deixa eu só ver se está indo o som. Não, o som não está indo. Está ativo. O meu computador não tem som. Então, isso vai ter gravação do celular. Aqui está um som. Eu vou botar no celular. Aqui tem um som. Porque o meu computador ele é muito Não, e é ela que vai falar coisa assim? Não. Não. Vai ser, eu vou falar rapidinho e aí você vai. E o
I say in Portuguese and then English. Hoje, nesse dia de celebração acadêmica, gostaríamos de homenagear a querida professora que deu início a esse importante diálogo entre tantos pesquisadores, pesquisadoras, professores, professoras e estudantes de diferentes universidades e países. Reunidos com base no ideal de construção conjunta do conhecimento científico, com muito afeto e poesia. Today, on this day of academic celebration, we would like to pay tribute to the dear professor who started this important dialogue between so many researchers, professors, and students from different universities and countries, bringing them together based on the ideal of joint construction of scientific knowledge with much affection and poetry. Construímos pequeno vídeo como uma homenagem a você, nossa querida Ana Cecília. We create a short video as a tribute to you, our dear Ana Cecília.
Esse abraço aqui não é só nosso, né? A todo um grupo dos maternos que estão por trás deles. Obrigada.
Afastar um pouquinho da caixa.
Ainda está fazendo barulho.
Não.
I'm very happy to participate in this tribute to my dear colleague and my dear friend, Ana Cecilia. Ana Cecilia is a very, very special person. In this moment, I would like to talk about an aspect that caught my attention when I read this book. This book of poetry written by Ana Cecilia.
From this book, I select the poem that shows how cultural psychology is embedded, is imbricated in Ana Cecilia's poetry. In your life, maybe. This beautiful poem talks about self, talks about ages, and talks about word to subject position. Ana Cecilia retired from the university, and in this moment of her life, she dedicated more to poetry. But I know, we know, that in her poetic veins runs the blood of the cultural psychology. The poem named O Caderno Vinho, the wine color notebook. I read this. Trago comigo esse caderno vinho como uma partilha secreta. O tempo é secreto e meu coração se compacta a si mesmo, receando expandir-se e desdobrar-se. Os sentimentos são indefinidos e me falta o ar. Falta-me expressão. Falta-me um interlocutor. A impossível sintonia, apenas esboçada, nunca plena. Tem uma oração e muitas canções desesperadas nesse espaço, agora deserto e mudo. Palavras de outros me tomam. Sou vazio. Sou posições do self a serem preenchidas. Desconecto-me da emoção e tenho crises de asma. Sirenes de polícia cortam o silêncio da noite americana. Talvez reais, talvez cinema. As coisas são irreais e parecem estar fora do mundo. Mesmo assim, me fascina. Clivagem dentro, fora. Impossível expressão. Olhos e almas contundidos pelos horizontes, quando o corpo precisa do aconchego da casa. Amigos poetas, queria suas palavras emprestadas para contar quão profundos são esses poços que me contêm. São essas algumas das palavras que me possuem. Como se sem ages, sou, nesse momento, alguém com uma word to subject position. Além do oceano, além do horizonte. Desse livro.
Não tem palavras que eu não sabia dizer.
Não tenho palavras realmente. I have no words right now. And it's just think that I'm a very lucky person to have been through my academic life, meeting such wonderful friends and scholars and people, so inspired people. And I had to just think to learn things, for being to get so much about affection and ideas and work, and I learned so much, during with all of you, mentors, and colleagues, and all of the students were my mentors all the time, and I learned so much from them. I'm so proud of them. They are here today, and I can. I was just for a total coincidence. I was something to put in my bag this morning, and I found a small notebook that was fit my bag. From the time when I was a clerk, and I show you the earlier, because I was just coming back, and I kind of some notes about. Not forget to say thank you to some people, or I had to give back his things that he had given us, and then close the apartment, things like that. And then today I was kind of seeing a move in my head, because everything started there at that point. Actually, before when things really start, when you want to learn about who you are, and where you live, and to understand your reality. And for me, it's why cultural psychology is in my veins, because I refuse, and I always did, in psychology, that do not look at our realities, and to help to understand who we are. And I here, and I'm so grateful that thank you so much. And also, you always say that a joke, but it's not a joke. It's like we want really what we really want to do is to understand how do you say, the roots of psychological subjectivity in family, especially in Brazil. It's just a very humble goal, but it's what is moves us. And I also remember about so many people that came here from other countries, and people who, all of us here, live in the Ufa reality with all the situations that are not so romantic or poetic, but we just stick together, and it's lots wonderful. The possibility to do that. And I think something that I learned that is very important is that if you have a meaningful work with people with you working together, problems don't matter much, Don't much. You don't need to stay there, stop in that point, but they'll be always there. But the center, you can't lose the center. That to work with love, with joy, with pleasure, to be capable to play as them. Don't lose that. It's so important. I think I had that also. So I should, for instance, Brenda can draw me with the cat, the cat can, it's not to be away, because it's part of me too. Anyway, that kind of wonderful people, I can name everything, but I remember all of you with love. I think, for instance, people who come here like Roger Bivas, Emily, people so close to my heart. And anyway, thank you so much. I saw that I had no words, but but I only want to say thank you so much. And I also have to congratulate you for this wonderful seminar. I'm so glad to, it's so interesting to know things happening so well, so beautifully. Virginia, congratulations for everything. I know Pina, I know you are the soul. Nandita, Vivian, Patrícia, Juliana, all of you, who I know and who I only meet now. Congratulations for everything. Since the first day.
I'm sorry, I'm not on the schedule. Very briefly. In the Indian tradition, whenever you become overwhelmed with emotions, particularly for a homage like this one, someone or the other comes up with some. Or my friend sister, Anna Cecilia, she's terrible at driving. So every time she tells me she's going to pick me up, I'm nervous because we go flying over the road in Salvador, turning so fast before I'm sitting there shivering. So thank you very much.
So, everyone, tomorrow we have another busy day. It will be in another place. And yeah, some of you got rides for tomorrow. And yeah, and thank you very much for being here today. And yeah, see you tomorrow. Yeah. Batendo palma. Yeah, so see you tomorrow and let's go to have a lunch together.
Deixa eu pegar aqui. Tem uma. Se você puder pegar ele.